Hey film buffs, welcome back to Film Feature 43. Today we're talking about a 1980s classic that spawned a franchise that lasted till today. Its last installment of its 4 movies that came out in 2021, so it's still going strong. It spawned TV shows and movies and books, comic books, all the thing a studio wants a movie to accomplish, this movie accomplished, and you know what it is because you've seen the title of the video. Today we're talking about the 1984 classic, Ghostbusters! So, let's get into it. So, the original script for Ghostbusters was written by one of its stars, Dan Aykroyd, who kind of got inspiration from his grandfather and father, who were really big into the occult and seances and ghosts and that sort of thing. His father actually eventually wrote a book called The History of Ghosts, a true story of seances, mediums, ghosts, and Ghostbusters, so you could kind of say it was in his blood. He originally wrote the script with himself, John Belushi, and Eddie Murphy in mind to be the original Ghostbusters, and it was supposed to take place in space in a future where Ghostbusters were just a dime a dozen, kind of like plumbers or air conditioner repairmen, where you could just hire one from the phone book, if they still had phone books in the future. But unfortunately, when he was writing the script, John Belushi passed away, so that really changed things. Also, the Ghostbusters were originally supposed to be called Ghostsmashers in Aykroyd's original script. They hadn't landed on the name Ghostbusters yet, but we'll come back to that. Ivan Reitman, who produced Animal House with John Belushi, and directed Meatballs with Bill Murray, and directed Stripes with Murray and Ramis, was brought on to direct this film. This gave a lot of goodwill with Columbia Studios president Frank Price, who gave the movie a $25 million budget before a script was even finalized, but that came with one caveat. The movie had to be done in 13 months. Reitman liked the idea of Ghostbusters, but he didn't want them to be a dime a dozen group of people. He wanted them to be kind of their own special thing, and he definitely did not want it to be in space in the future. He wanted it to take place in New York City. So he brought on his frequent collaborator, Harold Ramis, who wrote on all of Reitman's films to this point, except for Cannibal Girls, which was Reitman's first film that was only made for $9,000. You could kind of say that was a low-budget film, and one that you can watch on YouTube if you want to. Reitman, Ramis, and Aykroyd all went to a beach house and banged out a rough script in about 2 weeks. The only thing of which staying from Aykroyd's original script was
Mr. Stay Puft.
It is kind of a mixture of the Michelin Man, the Angelus Marshmallow Man, and the Pillsbury Doughboy. The suit for the 112.5-foot Stay Puft Marshmallow Man actually cost $20,000 to make. They made 3 of them, and all 3 of them were destroyed during the production of Ghostbusters. Early production of this film ran into a lot of roadblocks.
Fire and brimstone coming down from the skies. Rivers and seas boiling.
40 years of darkness, earthquakes, volcanoes.
The dead rising from the grave. Human sacrifice, dogs and cats living together, mass hysteria.
One of which is Columbia Pictures was bought out by everybody's favorite soft drink, Coca-Cola, and they did not like the idea of Ghostbusters and wanted to gut it. Also, the name Ghostbusters was owned by Filmation Studios, who had a TV show of the same name, albeit with a space in between, back in the 1970s, and they refused to give up the name to Columbia Pictures. So, in early production, every shot that had the word Ghostbusters in it, whether it be spoken or written somewhere, had to be shot 2 different times, one with one sign behind them, one with another sign, one yelling Ghostbusters, and the other one yelling Ghostbreakers. And I have no idea where Ghostsmashers went, but it got thrown out the window a long time ago. As far as casting goes, Dan Aykroyd assured everyone that Bill Murray was going to be involved, but Bill Murray was in France during all of pre-production, so no one was really sure he was going to show up for filming, but eventually, first day of filming, he did show up.
I love this plan. I'm excited to be a part of it. Let's do it.
He only agreed to do Ghostbusters if Columbia Pictures would produce a remake of Razor's Edge that he could star in, which they did, which came out the same year as Ghostbusters, and bombed. It did so poorly that Bill Murray thought that Ghostbusters was going to be the peak of his career, so he took a hiatus from acting in any big roles for 4 years, eventually coming back for the movie Scrooge, which was released with a tagline, "Murray's back amongst the ghosts." Before Billy and Harold Ramis were actually cast completely, Michael Keaton turned down the role for Venkman and Egon, And also, Louis Tully's role was going to go to John Candy, but he wanted him to be more of a cool guy. If you don't know, Louis Tully is Rick Moranis' character, and they wanted him to be kind of this nerdy guy. Candy didn't want that, so they split over creative differences. And Sigourney Weaver, according to the casting directors, gave one of the strangest performances, where she is the one that actually came up with the idea that Dana turned into a dog, so she got down on all fours and started barking to kind of get her point across, and they knew they had their Dana at that point. And also, Paul Reubens, Pee Wee Herman himself, was supposed to be Gozer, which would have been something. But the creative minds behind Ghostbusters didn't want somebody so recognizable behind the face of Gozer, so they scrapped that idea. But I can just say that would be something. In solving the naming problem, Coca-Cola and Frank Price did not get along, so Frank got fired or left, or whoever you ask, they're going to tell you something different. But he eventually went to Universal Pictures to be the head of Universal Pictures, who owns Filmation, so he finally said, just give them the name Ghostbusters. They did, and the rest is history. We finally have our big three cast, but Reitman wanted someone who was not a scientist to come off the street and kind of be a sit-in for the audience. So in comes Ernie Hudson as Winston Zeddemore, who was originally supposed to show up on page 28 of the script. A lot of the scenes, like being slimed by Slimer in the hotel, was supposed to go to Ernie Hudson's character, but Bill Murray kept improvising and making people laugh, so they kept throwing more and more lines this way. So unfortunately, Winston Zeddemore went from being page 28 to page 65 in introduction. And add insult to injury, Ernie Hudson's landlord, after the release of Ghostbusters, gave out his address to people, so people would show up asking for pictures and autographs and all that kind of stuff. So his landlord essentially doxed the poor guy so bad that he had to move away from where he was living.
That was really stupid.
Hudson wasn't the only actor to have a rough time. Everyone's go-to 80s weasel, William Atherton, was actually harassed for years for his role as the EPA agent in Ghostbusters. He was even called ridiculous when he was walking down a street by a bus full of school children. So it was pretty rough.
Yes, it's true. This man has no dick.
But at least he escaped injury while on set, because they were going to dump 75 pounds of marshmallow fluff on him, and he kind of was like, 75 pounds is still 75 pounds, that'll probably hurt. So they dumped it on a stuntman instead, and the stuntman got knocked flat on his back, so they actually toned down the amount of fluff that they used. Said fluff actually being shaving cream, which they used 500 gallons of during the scene where everybody's getting marshmallow fluff dumped all over them. Another cool practical effect is where Dana's turning into Zool. No, not that effect. That wasn't done practically. It's the scene where Dana's floating above her bed. They actually put her in a full-body cast or harness, and it was connected to a pole that was hidden by the curtain. You can actually see Bill Murray walk underneath the pole while he's, like, examining her floating. That was all done practically. The voice of possessed Dana.
There is no Dana, only Zool.
What a lovely singing voice you must have.
And Zool is actually done by Ivan Reitman himself. One more practical effect revolves around one of the most memorable characters in the movie, Onion Head. Actually, you probably know him as Slimer, but his name on set was Onion Head. Slimer was mostly done by puppeteering, and the puppet was supposed to look like John Belushi, but I don't see it. So they had a cast, they had a script, they had a name, now they needed a kick-ass song. Fleetwood Mac's lead guitarist Lindsey Buckingham was approached to originally do the theme song for Ghostbusters because he did the Animal House Holiday Road song. But he didn't want to be typecast as the soundtrack guy, so he turned it down. Huey Lewis was also approached, who wrote the song I Want a New Drug, which was used as filler in the background for the scenes until the theme song was written. But he turned it down, so those scenes were given to Ray Parker Jr. to help him write the theme song, which he did, and was later sued by Huey Lewis for copying I Want a New Drug. I'll let you decide. Ray Parker Jr. nonetheless wrote the song in 2 days, getting the famous "Who You Gonna Call?" from a commercial at 4 a.m. for a Roto-Rooter type company. That yelled in the chorus of the song is actually Ray Parker Jr.'s girlfriend and her friends, because he couldn't find anybody else so late to help him record. RPG was not the only person to get sued over the making of Ghostbusters. Harvey Cartoons actually sued production as well, because they said that the Ghostbusters logo looked too much like their character Fatso from Casper the Friendly Ghost. Eventually, the courts ruled in Ghostbusters' favor.
Who are you gonna call? Someone else.
And although Ray Parker Jr. is not afraid of no ghost, Ivan Reitman kind of is, because the jail that they shot the prison scenes in was actually supposedly haunted. A lot of the film that they used there had scratches down it for no apparent reason, and Ivan Reitman really didn't feel like going back to fix those scenes, so they just cut what they could out of those scenes. So everything was in place, the filming was done, and it only took them 2 weeks after filming wrapped to get their first rough draft of Ghostbusters. They refined it, and eventually the movie was released June 8th of 1984, and when it was released for kind of marketing purposes, they replaced the 555 number that was in the trailers with a 1-800 number that fans could call and actually get connected to a recording of Dan Aykroyd and Bill Murray, essentially saying, "Sorry, we're out busy busting ghosts," to kind of pull people in and get them excited about the movie. The line received thousands of calls per hour, 24 hours a day, for weeks on end. After its release, it became the highest grossing comedy of all time to that point, until Home Alone came out in 1990, and adjusted for inflation, it is Columbia Pictures' highest earning film. And one more piece of trivia, the firehouse used in Ghostbusters was also used as a set in the 1994 movie The Mask, as well as Hitch, Seinfeld, and How I Met Your Mother. So that was 43 facts about Ghostbusters. Let me know what you guys think. Is there anything you learned? Let me know what movies you guys want to see. And thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.